What is up, card fighters? I hope you're all having a great day today. Thank you so much for joining me on the Prime Vanguard channel. Today, I'm going to be discussing to you guys about my personal experience in Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022. Now, before I delve into today's video, if you guys enjoy discussion content like this on my channel, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do not forget to hit the notification bell so you guys are always up to date on my newest videos. Don't forget to let me know about your own experience and how you guys felt on BRO if you participated this year in the comment section below. I'm very curious to hear everyone's thoughts and their feelings and experiences about this year's Bushiroad Rumble Online. And if you played last year, please let me know as well in the comments too. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started off with this tournament experience. So I want to start off first by explaining my initial thoughts on BRO and how I got into it. So I saw Bushiroad Rumble Online for last year, and it was for Premium, V Premium, and Standard. They had it all for the 3 different regions. I at the time didn't have the proper equipment to set up to do an online tournament. I didn't know, I wanted to make it look like as nice and as niche and clean as possible. I registered for this year. I registered 1 week prior for V Premium, or at the beginning of when V Premium started. And this year I took Jewel Knights for V Premium. I'm gonna do a deck profile for my Jewel Knight deck in the description below so you guys can see that as well. And I'm gonna have these 2 videos released at the same time so they're all up to date. Now, for my initial thoughts, that was my setup for BRO. I used my camcorder, I had my lights, I had my tabletop light, I had my up top light, I used my Mac PC laptop, I used the Apple earbuds as my, microphone to speak to my opponent, and that was basically my initial setup. I had my playmat and everything ready to go, so my setup was very clean and nice looking. I also joined the Discord. I spoke to some judges about that, and they agreed that I had a really good setup as well, and I shouldn't have too many problems with this. Going into the tournament, I was actually very psyched. They informed us, we had the opening ceremony, the judges spoke and informed everything was going to go. To make their ceremony short, essentially what it was we played 8 rounds of Swiss. It was only 1 game, you lose, and then the next day they'll have the top 16. Those will be the streamed matches that will be on the Twitch stream, that will be commentated obviously by other Vanguard figures like they did last year, to explain what's going on in those matches. In this competition, I believe we had about 350 to 400 people competing, and we went through the games pretty fast. We had 45 minutes, we were allowed 45 minutes per round. We had a 10-minute overtime, and then we were allowed about a 2-minute break in between rounds to get our stuff together so that we'd be able to get set up for our next game. I was completely fine with this. I enjoyed, the rules made very sense to me. I think 45 minutes, some people disagree with me, but I think 45 minutes is enough time to finish a game. I will say that in this particular case, I think that something I would like to see change for next year is that there is a 5-minute break time in between matches, simply for the fact, I'm not talking about playing games. I think that 45 minutes, 10-minute overtime extension, and then a 5-minute extension in between games, this way to have proper setup is completely necessary, because you have to keep in mind that you're dealing with people who are playing online. And in my experience from BRO, I played against a lot of people who I can tell were playing either A, with their laptops like me, or B, with their phones. My first game was against somebody who was playing definitely with his phone, and he was also and this is just me assuming, but he was an out-of-country player, so his connection was a little bad as well. So he didn't have the best visuals, and I myself am not to put everything on my opponents. I myself had some audio issues, because I was trying to use the microphone that I'm using now, like when I record my videos, to record my, not record, but hear my own audio to my opponent when I played. This didn't work, so the first 4 minutes of my first 2 games, we spent about me getting my audio right, and I will admit that that was a fault on my part, but because this was my first experience playing online or doing a remote fight setup, I wasn't entirely sure how everything worked. Plus, we had a lot of programs running on my computer. I had the Battlefly, Discord, and then the audio setup on my laptop to make sure that they had the best audio and visuals possible for my opponent to see throughout the game. And that is why, in my opinion, for the next BRO tournament, I think that there should be a 5-minute mandatory, or they should leave like links and things like that to, I guess, do remote fight setups, or they should have testing or some way to make sure that everything is good before the matchups start. Because there are some games where I went to overtime, and I felt like those extra 4 to 5 minutes would have helped if they went into the game. That is my general thoughts on BRO and the tournament format, the tournament experience of how they set up the games, how everything got started. I thought it was all pretty fair and very nice. They definitely worked out a lot of the kinks from what I heard from last year, and this year, I guess being my first one, was really good. Hopefully next year they implement some of those changes to make it a little bit better, and then we have a fully functional online tournament for everybody to play. And now I'm going to talk about the deck that I brought for BRO, and I actually brought Jewel Knights for V Premium. Jewel Knights had been a deck that I have featured on my channel a long time ago, and I put it with my Soul Saber Dragon deck, and as disappointed as I was, I did not bring Soul Saber Dragon with me into this tournament. I felt like playing pure Jewel Knights for this event. Now, the reason why I felt like playing pure Jewel Knights for this event is, one, because of the matchups I thought I was going to face. Spoiler alert now, I did not play against any of the decks that I trained for. In this tournament, I was expecting to see a lot of Night Rose, a lot of Gurgwits, Prisms. I think Prisms post-ban, like some people still have some Prism lists out there, so that's what I was expecting. Prisms, Luard, and there was Shadow and Amon. Those were the 5 decks I was expecting. So quick little recap: Gurgwit, Amon, Shadow, Night Rose, Luard, and Prisms. Those were the 5 decks that I was really training for in this event. And in my experience, the one deck that I really liked to play were aggro decks, and decks that had the ability to keep up with these other decks that are already moving so fast because of the consistency of their cards. I wanted to bring Kagero, but then I thought to myself, and I was like, you know what? Kagero does have a strong early game, but over time, Overlord, I just feel like he can't keep up with the massive aggression of these other decks. And you don't build up the best hand with Overlord either, so defending is not going to be your best strategy either. I can see myself taking a lot of damage and having to probably play around it and hoping for heal guardians and crits like that. Overlord just definitely wasn't the route to go for me for Kagero. My next choice was Narukami. I was definitely going to play specifically Vanquisher, because that's a build that I'm more familiar with than I am Eradicators. I chose not to play Vanquisher simply for the fact that I didn't have enough experience with the deck I have all the cards for it, but not enough experience with the deck, so I didn't feel comfortable bringing it. And then there were some other options I thought of, but I was like, you know what, all these other decks feel kind of slow to me. And then I watched a bunch of YouTube videos of gameplay, matchups, them playing against other decks. And then I finally came to the decision of like, okay, well, you know what? I have a deck that I'm vaguely familiar with, and that was Jewel Knights. I played the Jewel Knight engine in my Soul Saber Dragon deck, and a lot of the Jewel Knight cards, based off the effects they have, they're very consistent, they're very aggro, they have a really good early game, and Royal Paladin, in my opinion, despite the royal hate that it gets, Royal Paladin in my opinion has a lot of good cards that this deck can take advantage of, and its generic support is really good too. So I ended up playing pure Jewel Knights, and this is the deck list that I have here. I'm gonna give you guys a quick little showcase of that using deck log in this little picture that you guys can see now. I'll do a full deck profile of that, and I'll leave that in the description below. If not, I'll make sure that's coming out in the next few days so you guys can see my deck profile with full explanations of my cards. But choosing Jewel Knights, I said to myself, Jewel Knights have 3 things going for it. One is their consistency. Jewel Knights have amazing consistency because all of their pieces, when they get called over, they all do something. And all of the function that those cards have when they get called over serve a different purpose at a different period in the game. And the fact that they're searchable with the Jewel Knight name because of cards like Ashley, Sybil, and recyclable with the Jewel Knights and their skills, I said to myself, okay, so every card that I play in this deck will serve a different purpose that I can rely on at any period in the game when I need something. That was the first step. The second step was familiarity. Like I said, I played the Jewel Knight engine with Ashley, the Great Lyell, and Morvidius all the way back when I played Soul Saber Dragon. And the deck was kind of tiered around that sort of playstyle anyway. So I was like, okay, I have some vague familiarity with Jewel Knights. Okay, I can rock this. And then the third thing was aggression. So Jewel Knights, in my opinion, from my experience in the tournament, they have some of the best early game aggro that I've seen in a V Premium deck in a while. Sybil is a great ride target, and all of their cards are great ride targets, honestly. Like, it didn't matter what card I rode, I always got a plus off of it. Even if I rode power cards like Lyell is my grade 2, and Eunice to get a retire, those all still did something that would benefit me throughout the game. So every period of the game that I was riding for my grade 1, 2, or 3, in my re-ride to my kill turn, which was Salome or Ashley, I always got a plus off of that in my playtesting practice, and I liked that a lot. And another important thing is the fact that they recycle themselves. The fact that they're recycling their key pieces and building up soul, and they're not using a lot of resources, means that I knew to myself that a damage denial strategy wasn't something I was worried about, and that just improved their own aggro play more because I'm not relying on counterblast to use these really niche skills throughout the game. So I don't have to rely or worry about my opponent attacking my rear guards, because if they blow up my rear guards, it's perfectly fine. I'm going to recycle them with my skills anyway, so it really wasn't that big a deal as I was playing throughout the tournament. Those are the three reasons I brought them. I had different game plans playing against the decks I played, but that's not what happened at all. So now that I've explained my deck and its choices, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and talk about my matchups and my experience throughout my 4 rounds of BRO. So in my first matchup, my very first game was against Starvaders, and I played specifically against Chaos Breaker, and he didn't see Infinite Zero, he went straight into Chaos Breaker, but I played against Starvaders in my first game. I won this game, I was victorious, and the reason being that I look back on it, because I took notes for it in all my matchups, was that my Chaos Breaker player wasn't really too familiar with what my deck did. I can tell by the way he was playing, and I was denying him and retiring his Craving Claws, which I didn't think I thought I could do, and I was denying him that grade 2 that lets him lock cards from the top of my deck and call them to rear guard. I kept denying him these pluses of his Craving Claws. I would guard for those. Even if it was a 1-card pass, I was like, I don't care. I'm not gonna let him get this extra resource because he called a card from his hand. So I stopped his Craving Claws. I stopped that grade 2 by just locking stuff from the front row because Jewel Knights call over themselves. So even if I lose out on maybe like my 4 attacks, I still have my 3 stalled attacks with the extra force marker that you have to deal with that you're giving me before you can rely on your Chaos Breaker to make up for that card you're retiring anyway. So I was able to maintain aggression throughout the game. I had early game aggression. I was doing 3-card swings on grade 2, and I was doing 2-card swings on grade 1. Finally, grade 3 came. I went first, by the way, so I had that going. I had Ashley. Basically, perfect setup. I won the game not too long, and that was pretty easy to deal with. My second game, I played against Astral Poets. I was victorious against this deck too. Astral Poets, I'm actually very familiar with the deck. I played that deck all the way throughout its incarnation. I played the best version with the Uranus and the Genesis Dragon. So I was very familiar with the deck and how to beat it. I simply just rushed as hard as I possibly could. Grade 1, I called 2 grade 1s, attacked. Grade 2, had my Livaros, attacked. He was only doing like 1 attack a turn. He got to grade 2. He tried to fight back with me by attacking my rear guards, but as I stated, against Jewel Knights, that doesn't really do too much simply for the fact that I was already on Sybil, so I was guaranteed to get a grade I was guaranteed to get a Jewel Knight back, in my opinion. I did get a Jewel Knight back after I rode onto my Ashley. I got Ashley given for my first ride too, yay me. And I had all of that basically set up to essentially just kill him. He went to his, he went into his Astral Poet turn where, you know, he got his Valkyrion, got his restand. He pulled 4 crits. But me being familiar with the deck, I was already very aware of how the deck would work. I had 2 PGs in my hand. I got one from my drive check from my last turn. I got one that I just been holding on to throughout the game in my mulligan hand because I knew that eventually when this came, I was gonna have to deal with it. I can tell that he was playing a 12 crit build as well, so I knew he didn't have a lot of hand to drop on resources. He only had his 2 attacks. He had his Vanguard attack. He had his Astral Poet attack. He had to put his force marker onto his DK to make that relevant, but he put all of his crits on Valkyrion. That obviously didn't work for him. For the Vanguard, I was able to PG that. Valkyrion second attack, I had the triggers in hand to block that. And basically after his Valkyrion turn, I just pushed and shoved for game. My last 2 games is where I lost. So my third game, I played against Anj Highlander. Going into this matchup, I didn't know anything about it. I saw some of his cards going 0-1-2. I thought he was playing like either some sort of prism version, and then finally he hit Anj, and I thought he was just using Anj he got to his prism cards. I didn't see any prism cards, and then I finally took the hint that this was not prism. And I was like, okay, what am I playing against? So he rides into Anj, and then he plays this grade 3. And I forgot the name of the grade 3, but when I find it, I will put her picture up in this video. But he plays this grade 3, and he forces his entire attack strategy around it. He didn't see Pearl Sisters, he didn't see anything. He keeps stacking force markers onto this grade 3, and this grade 3 has the ability to where she can search a copy of herself from deck, she'll restand, but then she draws 2s as well. He's playing Highlander too, which took me later in the game to figure out, but that means that tells me that he was playing a lot of one-of cards, so he was playing a lot of cards that were essentially one-ofs that did like these niche things here and there, drew him cards, recycled his grade 3s, things like that. Anj just kept building up his resources, building up his hand. I was rushing as hard as I could because if I didn't have a game plan, my game plan was to rush. If I didn't know what to do, I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna rush, stick to my original game plan, focus on myself because that's all I think I could do. I will slowly play against this. We went into time around. We had to do a judge call because 5 minutes of the opening game into our 40 minutes essentially was me getting past some audio issues. That's just the truth, to be honest. I'm not a scumbag. I'm not gonna lie about that. I had some audio issues. My opponent was patient. We went into overtime. We were on turn 1. The judge said that he's gonna give us about 4 minutes. I rushed through my turn. I made a misplay, but it didn't matter. He had a PG to survive it anyway, and then he killed me. So that's how I lost my game 3. My game 4, I played against Chaos Messiah. This was my final game of the tournament. He had perfect setup. He rode grade 1, he went first, he had Volcagode, he just kept pushing with his Volcagode, he got the grade 2, lets him check grade 3, and he never hit it, but he just started making big numbers, force 2. It was a perfect setup. I couldn't get past it, and I was forced to deal with it. I tried to get resources. I misplayed. I had to misplay because I PG'd to keep my Ashley when I should have held onto my PG to let my Ashley go. The idea behind keeping Ashley was that I was able to have enough attacks to push and kill. Unfortunately, I was only able to get 4 attacks. My calling cards with Salome was really weak because I had to rely on my triple drive check. I only saw 1 trigger out of 6 drive checks. Out of 6 drive checks, I only saw 1 trigger, which really did suck. And I didn't see that trigger until my 2nd attack with Salome. So I was already past the restand with that, which was very unfortunate for me because I couldn't get past that. That sucked. It sucked that I could not get past that with the additional triggers, but he won and I was out the tournament. I chose to drop from it, but that was it for me in BRO. Overall, I enjoyed BRO. I thought BRO was a lot of fun. It was my first online tournament, my first remote fight tournament. As far as the meta for BRO, I think that it was really interesting. I want to make it very clear. I saw no Gurgwitz. I saw no Night Rose. I saw no Prism, no Luard, none of that. I'm sure that there were people in the tournament who were playing that, but I never faced against it. I played against, like, in my opinion, I played against like tier 2 rogue decks. I think Anj Highlander might be the only deck up there that I would say that's like tier 1 status right now. I definitely don't think the deck is broken. Going back into that matchup, like I said, I could have won if I started knocking out those grade 3s. The grade 3 that he was focusing his entire strategy around, because he had to call it out. But I was so fixated on attacking his Vanguard because I didn't know what his deck did that I screwed myself over. I definitely could have won 3rd game if I didn't make that misplay. 4th game, it was perfect setup, nothing I could do. Game 5, no matter what I faced, I had a plan if I played against the meta deck, so hopefully it would have went my way, and I potentially could have been in top 16, but unfortunately that's just not what the fates had in store for me. Finishing thoughts, like I said, I enjoyed BRO. The meta, the V Primo meta is definitely interesting. I'm gonna make a video on this too, but I think that V Primo is in a spot where the meta is not as crystal clear as I think people thought it would be, and I just want to put that out there. Jewel Knights, final thoughts on the deck. I think the deck is good. I know that we have support coming in. I haven't really seen the new support yet. I'm going to take a look at that, and obviously I might say something about it in my Jewel Knight deck profile. If not, I'll say something about it later down the line when I make the deck, or if I make like a V Premium tier list, which I'm thinking about making now that I've gotten done with BRO. But that is all for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned in with me on my BRO experience. I hope that if you guys are going to go thinking about joining BRO for next year, I recommend it. It was really fun. This tournament felt kind of short just because we didn't have as many players, but I'm very curious to see what your guys' thoughts were, experiences in BRO. If you guys played in that, tell me down in the comment section below, and I will respond back to that. Without further ado, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and take off and work on my next video, but I will see you soon. Peace, y'all.